So a lot of folks have asked how to do wheel bearings, rear wheel bearings on a DeLorean. I've seen some write-ups on DMC Talk, but no videos and nothing super duper detailed. So I'll go over that for you in this video. I think Dave Swingle said it. It is just like BMW wheel bearings. So again, just step by step, go over how to get these out and replace them. The first step is to remove the rear wheels. So jack the back end of your car up and get these wheels off. After that, I recommend the next step is to get this main inner hub nut off. The hub is in two pieces. There's an outer hub that has these lug studs on them, and then a inner hub that basically bolts to the axle shaft. But anyway, before you get going anywhere, get this nut off. You can either have a partner press the brake to lock the rotor, or pull the emergency brake and put the transmission in gear. There's lots of ways to get that off, so we'll get this nut off. So the next step then would be to get your axle unbolted from the inner portion of the hub. So I'm going to undo these 6 bolts that hold it to it. You'll notice mine looks probably a little different than yours. It's got a LS4 V8 in it with a Porsche 996 transmission. That's why you see the exhaust curving around back here. So you won't have that, but anyway, get these axle bolts out. Again, you might have to turn it, use the e-brake, put it in gear, different stuff like that to hold it for you. But get this axle off this inner hub. Alright, I just got the axle off of the inner hub flange. I think some folks say take the whole axle out. With my setup, it's a little bit difficult to take the whole thing out. I think it's an unnecessary step, but do not let them hang by their own weight. So I just went ahead and zip tied it to get the weight off of it onto the trailing arm there. Backing up just one step, I don't think I mentioned, this is a 1.25 inch socket for this inner nut here, and I think the bolts for the original DeLorean axles were 17 millimeter. I have, because of the high angle boots I have to use, I have some socket heads, some Allen head bolts that hold that on. Anyway, I think we're all caught up here. Next thing to do, now that you don't need any stopping power to get bolts off, let's go ahead and take this caliper off. I'm doing both sides at the same time here, but I'm just showing you the passenger side. It's the same thing on both sides. So I'm going to opt to take the e-brake cable off by getting this nut off here and moving the e-brake cable up and out of the caliper. And I will unbolt the caliper from the hub assembly, and this hard brake line is going to be fastened, or at least kind of sort of held to the trailing arm with some plastic clips. They're probably going to be really brittle on you, but carefully try to pop this line out. And I'm just going to be suspending the caliper up in this area here by just using the little bit of give that the hard line will give me. I'll go ahead and get this e-brake cable off, and then I'll show you where the bolts are for the caliper to the hub, and we'll pick it back up there. Alright, that's off. This is just a 10 millimeter nut, and then you just kind of wiggle this piece up and out of the e-brake hole there. As I mentioned, the next step is to get the caliper off. So you're going to want to get this bolt off. You can access it by coming back through here. And there's another one. I don't know if my camera is going to be able to get to it here. Yep, there it is, right there. And again, there will be a space back here that you can stick your socket through and get that bolt. So just those 2 bolts, and the caliper should be able to lift off of here. Okay, once you get the caliper up and out of the way, this will be your first true test of what your wheel bearing is like. There should be 0 play. You shouldn't be able to move this thing around at all. And this one, it's really hard to show in the camera, but you can hear it moving around like crazy. Alright, here is the rotor with the outer hub. I call it the outer hub because it's got this flange piece with the lug studs going through it and splines inside. This outer piece presses up to the inner race of the bearing. So here's your bearing in here. On the back side, there's a lip that you press it up to. On this side, it just has a C-clip. You can see the ears here and here, which I'll be pulling off in a minute. But again, this is just an explanation of kind of how this whole thing's put together. The inner hub, you can see as I turn this, is spinning. That's what your axles bolt to. And the way bearings are put together is you have the outer race, which is completely solid. You don't see any cuts in this metal. On the inside, however, you see that line? It's 2 pieces. So your inner race, try to hold this with one hand here. Your inner race is right here and on the other side. So when you go to take this out, you got to get this inner hub flange out the back. So we're going to have to, you can either press on this, or I'll show you a trick in a second, but you got to get this out. And by doing that, you are going to destroy your bearing. So whether this is a good bearing or a bad bearing, because this piece is press fit into the inner race, and the bearing outer race is press fit into the whole hub assembly here, when you put force on it going that way, you are going to split, highly likely, split the inner races. So if this bearing is sitting in there like this, as I push that out, this back inner race is probably going to come with it. It's just going to pop. This piece right here is just going to pop right out of there. So anyway, the way I'm going to get this out is, you don't want to mess up these threads. So I'm going to take the nut and put it on. Of course, I'm not going to be able to do this with one hand because this bearing is so trashed I can't even spin it on. But I'm going to spin it. I'm going to hold this and spin this nut on so it's flush up against here, and hit it with a hammer. Okay, just a couple of whacks, and out it came. Of course, it's not going to fit through the hole with the nut still on, so had to kind of push it back in just a little bit so I could get that nut off, but then lightly tap it out the rest of the way. So this is highly likely what yours is going to look like. Ugh. So this gives you a good picture of how it's all kind of pressed and locked in together. And sorry, like I mentioned, the inside race, you can now see the actual ball bearings in there. The outer inside race, although junk, is still in there because we were hitting that way, which pushes it into its seat, or where it stops. The outside race, sorry, the inner inside race here, came right out with the shaft, and here it is stuck on here. So you're gonna have to get that off. This can be a little bit difficult. Some folks put this in a vise, cut this off. Other folks can, get a chisel, a little bit of an air hammer or something, and hit it this way. But you've got to get this ring off this way for 2 reasons. One, obviously it can't be on there when you press it into the new bearing, and 2, you need this inside race to go back in here, because once I take this retaining ring, snap ring off, we're gonna press against the inside race. Now what you're saying, no, you should never press against an inside race. There's a couple times you have to do that for these bearings. We'll obviously do the outside race as we press the new bearing in this way. But remember, there's a stop, there's a lip back here that this the bearing outside race stops up against. So there's no way to get to the outside race on the back side. So you need an inside race in here to press up against. I'm going to go over all that in detail, but I think the first thing I'm going to do is get this inside race off of here and back up in its location. Alright, so there's no way in heck I'm going to be able to do this with one hand holding the camera, but this is the way I'm getting this race off. You see I already got a gap here. All I did was take the Dremel with a metal cutting disc and just cut a slit in the race. Not too deep. I mean, you don't want to get down onto the journal here. So just cut the slit, and then I just put a chisel in here and just knocking it off. Simple as that. Okay, the inside race is now off, that I will be putting back up in here from the back side. But the next step, before you forget, you got to take the safety snap ring out. Said it a couple times already. The outside race of the bearing seats against a lip in the back of this, back here where you can't see. That's where it stops, and then this snap ring is placed in here to stop it from coming this way. So see if I can do this with one hand. Maybe I can. There it is. Get that snap ring out, and then now there's nothing stopping it from coming this way. So I've got a handy dandy bearing press kit here. This is like 40 bucks on eBay or something. Anyway, once I get this all built, I'll show you exactly how everything works. But you'll need one of these pieces that just fits the inside race. And then out here, you're going to want something that fits on this piece of the hub assembly, because what you're doing is like so. You don't want to go on the inside because you'll just be pressing against it. What you're doing is creating a cavity, a cup, so to speak, to pull that bearing into the cup using this long threaded bolt here, bolted to whatever you have in the back. Whatever one of these pieces fits the inside race. So I'll build all that up and get back to you. I almost forgot that there's a couple ways to do this. Before I show you the method I'm using, which is keeping it on the car, another option is just take this whole hub off and put it in a bench press. You know, if you unbolt it from the, careful, this is going to have like an inch of travel still, but once you get the shock and spring off and get this bolt out of there and get the top bolt out of the upper control arm, then you unbolt it from the trailing arm. You can take the whole hub assembly out, and you know, you could be doing this on a bench press if you want. That's another option. All right, I think I'm all ready to go. So on the back, and I don't know if I could get back there, but just put the inside race back in. Find a cup in your kit. Mine was 95507 in whatever probably Chinese made kit this is. Anyway, it just fits the outside portion of the inside race and then I put the bolt through back there and put a socket with the breaker bar pressed up against the garage floor there. All I'm going to do is just crank on this, tightening, and it'll pull that bearing into this cup I've made here. So I'm going to crank away and get back to you. There it is. The old bearing came right on out. There's where it used to be. So now you can get a better picture here. You can see this lip in the back. This lip right here is where the outside race presses up to. So that's where you know to stop. I think it's really hard to press in. You just stop there. So now is a good time to clean this whole area out. I use a little bit of emery cloth, a little bit of compressed air or something to get this dirt out of where the safety snap ring goes. One last time. This is literally all it is. This piece here, out of my kit, it was right here. I just placed it on the inside race, just like that. Put this bolt and this washer through here, and from the back side, came through here. Had my cup placed up against here with its own plate to fit right in there, and just put a washer and I guess I just called it its pull nut on the end. And as you tighten, it's obviously making this area smaller and just pulls that bearing out into that cup cavity space you have. I suppose it's just like a ball joint press. Heck, even a bushing, when you replace that, you would put a cup like this on the outermost portion here and push the bearing out into that cup. So anyway, that's that. I'm going to clean all this up and get ready to put the new bearing in. Alright, fast forward a little bit. Ran into an issue. This is the passenger side, bearings already in, C-clips in. I had to use a different method to press or get this bearing in. And let me tell you why. Over on this side I can show you because I have the bearing out. Back behind here is this molded piece. People that have done this before are probably like, yep, I wondered how he was going to get that bearing in with that piece. So the problem with this molded piece of the hub is, unlike the front here where you have a nice flat surface, you can't get anything totally square on the back here, and you would risk pressing a bearing in kind of cockeyed or whatever. So age-old trick, temperature. The other side, all I did was heat up the hub nice and hot. I used MAP gas. You could probably use propane. And the bearing right now is in the freezer. So just to take up a tiny bit of tolerance, like I said, I haven't done it over here, but I'll emery cloth this, put a little grease in here. Just heat it up like crazy, going around the outside here with the heat. And then right after I stop the heat, go grab the bearing. And it required a little bit of persuasion, but just tapped it in with one of these that fit the outside race. You want to tap it in using the outside race of the bearing, not the inside races. So all I did was find one of these circles that would fit the outside race, and I just kind of lightly tapped it in there until it's seated, and then put in the snap ring. So I'm going to do that to this side. I'm going to heat this up. Well, first I'm going to clean this out with some emery cloth, get it all nice and clean. Heat it up with some grease inside of here, and tap the other bearing in. Again, this is kind of the one-handed challenge trying to do this, show you guys exactly what's going on. But here's a crucial part. The spindle, the inner hub, as it comes through the back, you can see I've got it. You can see it back here, turning a little bit. as it comes through the back, it's going to be pressing on the inside race coming this way. But if you pound it all the way through, if you tap it all the way through, then you're going to start pounding on the inside race and pushing it this way, which will want to pop it out, which is no bueno. So the way I've chosen to do this is where the bench press method would be better, because you could put a large cylinder on the outside of here and then just press on the hub in the back and push down on this, and that would do it. The way I'm going to choose to do it is I tap this in just up, I don't know if you can see it in there, just up to where the shaft of the spindle is going to start touching this inside race. And that leaves me enough room to put on the rotor. And remember, this piece of the rotor, this part of the rotor right here, is what presses up against this inside race to hold it. So this rotor is going to go on, and then I'm going to put the beveled washer. It's right here. It's got a bevel to it. It goes on this way. And the nut on there. And then I'm just going to start tightening it, and it should pinch itself together. What you want is to, let me see if I have an old bearing here. Here we are. Old bearing. So what you want is for the inner hub that bolts to the axle with the spindle on it to come this way, and the rotor, which has that piece that rests on the inside race here, and as I will turn the nut, it'll bring those two pieces together, sandwiching the inner races, which is what you want. Again, never go out that way on this inside race or out this way with this inside race. They'll want to pop out. Always work them in together to sandwich them. All right, there it is. All nice and pinched together. No wiggle. Really good. So, hate to say that reassembly is the reverse of removal, but that's kind of what it is. I mean, just put your caliper back on, put your e-brake cable back through with the 10mm bolt, put your axle back on, and away you go. I will say, you know, this thing's going to want to spin. When you're pinching these together with this bolt, it would be awesome if these had vented rotors where you could just put a piece like a punch or something through there to stop it. I ended up just putting a piece through the back and stopping it and cranking it down. But anyway, worked for me. Hopefully it works for you.